What's up everyone? It's time for a new video. Well, it's again about Arch. I've had many comments of you guys with recommendations for the MacBook and the Arch situation there. So I'm going to revisit Arch on the MacBook today. The first thing I will do is clone the SD card to the SSD. I will make 60GB free from the HFS partition from OS 10, and then we can clone the SD card onto there, so we have full performance. I can use standby and yeah, just get it working a bit more. And I also think that the battery will be better because the SD card always gets a bit warm. And I also noticed that under OS 10, if you have an SD card installed, that it costs about an hour in battery life. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that this will also be a little bit better than under Linux. So in this video I want to play a bit more with some stuff for Arch Linux to make the experience with the MacBook a little bit better. I will also try again to edit this video now under Arch Linux, maybe with Blender or with kdenlive or something like that. So yeah, I will give both of them a try, I think. Yeah, and after that I want to try if I can install a nicely working OS 10 virtual machine under Arch Linux. I've already done a little bit of researching, and seems like you can do this with VMware. You have to do a little bit of tinkering around with the application, but it should be possible to install OS 10 under Linux then. And the great thing about VMware is that they have guest editions for OS 10, so all the stuff like window resizing and stuff like that should work fine then. So I'm looking forward, and I hope that the performance isn't too bad for applications like Photoshop or Affinity Photo to do some photo editing and stuff like that, which would be great for the beginning to start with. So I don't know, I don't have this video planned a lot, so it will be maybe get a bit chaotic, but the first thing is to clone the SD card to the SSD. The second thing is to get this running then with grub or what else we have to do to get it running nicely. The third thing will be trying out some stuff you guys suggested or that I found to improve the experience even further. This will include stuff like power saving, and also the webcam, which someone of you also wrote something about in the comments, and I've also found a package that could be helpful. So yeah, and after that then it's going to be all about the VM. Without rambling a lot more here at the beginning, let's just start and go ahead. Now I have the SD card inserted, the 64GB SD card. I've called disk util list in here in the terminal, and here we can see the partitions on the SD card. So the first one, the second one, and the last one. And these three, we have to clone these three partitions to the SSD now. The ideal thing is if you get exactly the same size as these partitions, so you can clone them directly. Let's see if we can do this with this new disk utility thing here. So let's select the SSD and get into partition. And now we can hit plus. Okay, this is the main partition, and then we can resize. Okay, so we need 3 partitions, say 134 GB. You know what? Let's just make every partition a little bit bigger, and then it should be enough. Oh, okay, that's not nice. Okay, so let's remove this, remove this, remove this. Now it's working, but what is this? I don't want this. Oh. I don't want to do this so in this tool. That's just awful. So I'm going for 65 gigabyte here. Let's just format this as MS-DOS, and then I'm rebooting under Linux, and then I'm partitioning it there because this is just stupid. After booting back into Linux, I was finally able to create the partitions for the clone on the SSD using gparted, and that includes the first small partition, the second, which is the boot partition, and the third, which is the main file system. So I created all of those partitions, and for the actual cloning process I booted back into OS X. Back under OS X I listed all the partitions to find the correct ones, and then I started the clone process using DD. I noticed that this process was going very slow, despite the SD card reader in the MacBook is a USB 3. It still only read with about 8 megabytes per second. And then I remembered that under OS X, if you're accessing the raw data of your storage, instead of using dev/disk2 as free for disk2 partition 3, you should use rdisk2 partition 3, which stands for raw access or raw data. And then I was able to get the full speed, which was about 60 megabytes per second or something like that. Then I rebooted the system to see whether everything worked. So it is the next day. I had some problems with the boot, as to be expected after the clone, but the only thing that was wrong was that I've set up hibernation with a swap file, and of course the swap file is now in a different partition, so I had to change this in the settings in the config file for the hibernation. So yeah, but that was all. But yeah, I want to show you there's no SD card in here, so let's boot this up. Enter my password here real quick, and we get Arch Linux here. So let's hit enter. Grab. Enter, and this is now pretty fast. And there we are. So let's enter my password here, and we're in. So that is super nice, and now it's working fine. So let me quickly show you what I've done before I go back to the screen recording. All I did, I got to the suspend config file, changed the resume device to the correct partition here, which is now SDA6, and then I also had to call the make init cpio command to rebuild the image files. I did this all from the Arch live USB stick, and then I changed into the actual file system. Yeah, then I could run the stuff, reboot the system, and yeah, as you see, it's working fine now. So let me get this up the stand here and connect it to everything, and then we can go into a screen recording. First I wanted to get the webcam running. Now the webcam is indeed a PCI Express webcam. It's not connected using USB, but PCI Express. So that's why there was long no driver for this webcam. But some people on GitHub built an experimental driver for the webcam, which is made by Broadcom. Yeah, there are still some known issues that sometimes, for example, if the computer goes to sleep, but webcam is still running, there can be some issues or other stuff like that. But overall, it is working. Yeah, you can find it on GitHub and also in the user repository. So if you want to install this, the package in the user repository is called bcwc PCI Express DKNS. After the package is installed, you can load the module FaceTime HD. After you load the module or reboot the system, you also should be able to find the video serial device in the file system. Then I started Cheese to check out whether everything worked, and indeed it did. I also had a longer Google Hangouts with the webcam, and it was working fine, and the webcam worked fine all the time for multiple hours. Skype is currently not supported, but that's because of Microsoft. In the old Skype version the video support is broken, and in the new alpha there is currently no video support, so you have to use something else for if you want to do video calling. Now the next thing I want to talk about is battery life. As I told you in the last video, I was not super excited with the battery life under Linux, but one of you guys suggested a custom kernel which is available in the user repository, and this kernel includes some additional stuff, especially for the MacBook, like also for power saving, an Intel peace state patch. And I've gone ahead and installed this kernel. First of all, you need to add some signatures for the kernel sources, but then it took around 1.5 hours to build this on my machine. But after that, the kernel was installed. I updated grub and I rebooted the machine to check out how the battery was. So just a quick update. The kernel is finished building after 1.5 hours or something like that. I updated grub, booted into the new kernel, and it's working so far. As you can see, I'm running the kernel which we just installed. This is what the battery sign says now. So the battery is fully charged and it's 7.5 hours on the clock. That's actually less than I had with the normal kernel. I don't know why. In theory, this kernel should have some modifications that would allow for longer battery life, so I'm not sure what's going on here. I will give this a try for a reasonable amount of time and see whether it brings any improvements, because we've done, in the first episode, we've done quite a lot to save powers, and maybe this kernel is redundant for us. I don't know. Let's just try. Then I started installing VMware. I decided to go for the free VMware player. The ArchWiki has a great article about the VMware products. The first thing to do is install dependencies. I had almost most of them already installed, but one of them is in the user repository. So I installed that. The next step then is already to install the VMware player or workstation, and you need to download the package from the VMware homepage. It comes with a graphical installer, which is annoying, like on Windows. And then after that is finished, all that is left to do is to sort out the modules for the kernel. At the time when I recorded this video, there was a problem with kernels that are 4.6 or newer than 4.6. To get the kernel modules working correctly, I had to patch 2 files from VMware before the kernel modules can be built. And there's a guide for that in the ArchWiki. After the patching is complete, you are then able to build the kernel modules using the command for VMware modconfig. This command has to be run every time after the kernel is upgraded. But it's also possible to set up a DKMS file that is also described in the ArchWiki. Now, because Apple only allows its operating system to be installed on Macintosh computers, it's not possible to install OS X in a standard VMware environment which is not running under OS X already. But there's a patcher which makes VMware player or workstation think that it is actually allowed to run OS X under the current host. So this patcher is called Unlocker. I'm using version 2.4, and you have to find it yourself in the using Google. It's very easy to find. To run the Unlocker, you simply have to call the Linux install script, and then your VMware product is patched. After that, I started a VMware player and created a new virtual machine. And I could now select OS X as the guest operating system. I then gave the machine 4 GB of RAM. I created a hard disk, which I created on an SD card because of space reasons. I didn't have enough free space on the partition. And then, after you created the virtual machine, you have to open the VMX file in an editor and insert the line smc.version equals 0 at the end. And then you have to restart VMware. Otherwise, if you don't do this, the virtual machine won't be able to boot. And then to install OS X in the virtual machine, you need to get an ISO of the OS X you want to install, in my case El Capitan. And you can do this by downloading El Capitan from the App Store, and then there's a script which I link below in the comments, which can actually create an ISO file that is bootable by VMware. I first tried to create a bootable USB stick, which VMware was not able to boot from. That's why I created this ISO. But I was still not able to boot fully into the installer. The boot stopped at around half of the progress bar and nothing happened. I tried a lot of different things. I changed a lot of settings. I googled a lot. A few people have the same problem like me, but they didn't find a solution. So I tried a new version of the unlocker, the newest version, which also didn't help, and then I completely uninstalled VMware Player, installed VMware Workstation, and then it finally booted into the installer, and I could format the hard drive, I could install OS X fine, and then it rebooted to the configuration screen, but there everything was very laggy, as you can maybe see in the video. I then stopped screen recording, installed the VMware tools and all of that stuff, but the performance was still not very good. So it's the next day. Today I'm outside, as you can see, because it's such a nice day, and I've got the laptop with me. I've started editing the video in kdenlive, and so far it's pretty good. But first I want to talk about the virtual machine. As you could see, during the install everything was really laggy. After I stopped the screen recording, it was a little bit better, but then I've set up the machine, I've installed the guest tools and everything, and I could go into full screen and that worked fine, but it was still so, the performance was so bad, and everything was lagging, not all the time but often. I played with the settings, and then I found out that OS X doesn't support, in VMware doesn't support 3D or 2D acceleration, so I'm pretty sure that's why everything is so super slow, because OS X relies heavily on GPU acceleration with all of its UI stuff. So I could imagine that without having GPU acceleration working, that this really hurts the performance. I tried running Affinity Photo on there, and because of the missing acceleration there was no picture at all. The GUI was there, but when I opened the picture it was just blank. So I can't do with the machine what I wanted to do. So, and now let's talk a little bit about kdenlive. Have the clip in here. The first problem already began with the intro, because I have a video which is transparent, so when this falls down you can see me or the clip behind that. So kdenlive doesn't support video clips with transparency, so I had to do color keying to create this transparency here, and then I had to use the composite transition. So this was the first step. It took me half an hour or something to find that out, how I have to do that. And another thing is I often cut stuff in between of clips out there. For example, if I said something wrong or I forgot something, I just begin over in the same clip, and then I have to cut something out of the clip. Now let's do this. Just for example, I have now two cuts in this clip. This is the clip I want to delete, so I delete it, and then I have this space in the middle, so I have to remove space if I just want to remove something in between. So that's a lot of steps. What I do with in Final Cut, I select the range tool, I select the range I want to delete, hit delete, and that's finished. Here I have to go to the position, make a cut, find the second position, make a cut, select the clip, delete it, and then delete the free space in between. If anybody of you has a better way to do this, that would be awesome if you could let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I'm quite surprised, I would say. kdenlive is running pretty well otherwise. I had no crash yet. There are a decent amount of effects and stuff like that, so the bad thing is that there are only 10 of them or something like that are GPU accelerated. I don't know how the performance will be, because in Final Cut everything is GPU accelerated, or mostly everything. This thing flies even on an ultrabook like this. I can edit 1080p with 50 or 60 frames per second with no problem. I had sometimes projects that were over an hour long, had multiple effects in there and many clips, and yeah, it just chugged through it and didn't have a problem at all. So let's see how kdenlive will work performance-wise on this machine. It's a couple of days later again, but I made some progress with the virtual machine. I copied the virtual machine from the SD card to the SSD, and that solved the problem that everything was really sluggish and slow in response. Whether it was scrolling, opening applications, or just the normal operations, they were all so slow in the virtual machine. And that solved that problem for me now. I've played a few minutes around with it now and it's running fine. I also got Affinity Photo running. What I did is I did go to Preferences, I did go to Performance, and there's this option, Use Hardware OpenGL, and this one was checked. I unchecked it, and now the image is displaying I downloaded. But if I now try to move this around, now this is a small image. This is like not even full HD, I believe. Now you can see here, you can see the resolution here. So this is a very small image. Let's go ahead and do something like recolor here. Oh, okay, it's not too bad actually. But you can imagine if you go ahead and do this with a bigger image, the performance gets worse and worse and worse. And something else like motion or something would be impossible to use on here because of the missing 3D support. The virtual machine is not as bad as I thought it would be. So yeah, it's definitely usable for some light stuff, but not for more. Alright, I think this concludes this video. So I've edited everything until the last clip now in kdenlive. The performance is alright. If you add an effect that's not GPU accelerated, you definitely get some stutter here and there, so that's noticeable. But otherwise it's a nice program, and especially for an open source program it's very impressive what it can do. The virtual machine is also working for some basic stuff, so that's very nice. But I think that will be it for quite a while now for the Arch stuff on the MacBook. So don't expect a video about Arch on the MacBook in the next couple of months, I think. Maybe even a couple of years, I don't know. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you for watching, and yeah, and as always, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.